1 a.m. Club, welcome back to another video. Now, why am I saying that? Well, it's currently 1:01 a.m. and it's been a fully hectic day. It's actually been crazy. I've had two dinners at the same time. I had a couple of advisory calls. Like it's just, I sometimes forget I'm a 16-year-old and I do have school in the morning. So I'm running on 4 hours of sleep. I'll probably get another 4 hours today, but okay, I'm completely destroyed. It is what it is. That's what happens when you're in crypto. It is literally what it is. But anyways, moving on. Yesterday we were talking about a potential big move on Bitcoin. We were saying that it's a time where the meme where the guy is just poking Bitcoin with a stick, saying that, come on, Bitcoin, do something. And usually Bitcoin reacts in a very either hugely positive way or in a largely negative way. Now, we were talking about how important this 66.7K line of resistance is for Bitcoin, right? And unfortunately, Bitcoin was not able to move higher and break above the 66.7K line of resistance. And what I talked about on my Telegram community just a few hours ago, because I literally couldn't make a video. I wanted to make an update, but it was just, there's just too many things going on. So let me find it. There we go. Okay, now if I share the Telegram, I talked about a potential move towards the downside, but honestly, I didn't expect the move to be this fast. Actually, not fast, but this much towards the downside. So I said that if Bitcoin fails to break above 66.7, then I probably would expect a Bitcoin which trades at 64.5. And if we go into the price, I mean, we are basically there. We touched 63.7, and that's because Bitcoin broke down from this rising wedge that was forming, right? And Bitcoin was forming this rising wedge. Usually what you see is you have a bearish move towards the downside. Then the price of Bitcoin or any other asset, this can work for anything. So do learn this, right? Because you want to look at different analysts. I didn't see this yesterday. I just saw this a couple of hours ago. I wish I did. But if you draw this line of support, that's a beautiful line of support, beautiful line of resistance. After a bearish move, Bitcoin or any other asset, they tend to break towards the downside. And another confirmation that you can look at, because in TA, you want to have as many confirmations for your theory as possible. Like let's say you're working on a science project, you want to prove your theory, or you're doing a math problem. You want to prove your theory, even though that you know the answer may be right. You want to have as much backing and much evidence to support your answer as possible. And that's the same thing here. I mean, we were forming a rising wedge. We were forming a double top. It turned out to be a double top. And after breaking this neckline, similar to what we saw here, Bitcoin fell, right? And a good first level of support would be here. Initially, you would look at one. So this would be 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those would be the four like trailing take profits for a rising wedge. But is this game over? I mean, I'm just running this because a lot of people have been asking, can you make your content more educational? Like the truth is, I don't usually trade on the 4 hourly time frame or 1 hourly time frame. It's a bit irrelevant for me. I did do that at some point in my life, and then I understood that that was not the best way, because it kills a lot of your time and it's not as profitable as trading the long-term time frames. I'm in a long position since 43K, and this is something that I've not closed, and I'm probably not going to close until Bitcoin reaches 90K. But anyways, I mean, in terms of what Bitcoin will do now, it's a good question. It is a good question. It's the $1 million question, actually. But jokes aside, we can see that Bitcoin, yes, we did have a full moon, but unfortunately, this time round, it didn't quite work in Bitcoin's favor. Of course, once everybody discovers it, shockingly enough, the matrix kind of rigs it and it doesn't work anymore. But if we look into Bitcoin, I kind of had to clear my charts a little bit and zoom out and relook at everything, because sometimes you need to do that. Because if you don't do that, you kind of fall for your emotions. When Bitcoin goes up, you're like, oh, okay, we're bullish. When Bitcoin goes down, you're like, okay, we're bearish. But you need to eliminate your psychology as much as possible. So what I like to do sometimes, I just like to get rid of the price. I know it sounds crazy, but I usually do this with moving averages. So what I do is I eliminate the price and I just look at the moving averages. So as another educational thing, I like to use the 3, 10, and 30 SMA along with the 8 and 21 EMAs. But we can get rid of these EMAs. We don't really need them. And this is on the 4 hourly time frame for Bitcoin. It's called Consensio. What we can see here is we can see that the 3 and 10 period moving averages have crossed into each other. And on the last video, I said that, look, I'm a bit cautious here because we have seen this crossover. And historically speaking, whenever Bitcoin does this, it's usually at an all-time high. And it's usually when Bitcoin starts to kind of break into a bear market. That's why I'm a bit cautious. There is still some hopium. And the hopium is that Bitcoin goes up and starts trading a little bit higher, goes above 67K. And that's when Consensio can flip bullish once again, just like we did after the US spot ETF approval news. But if we do not do that, and if Bitcoin continues to dump down, usually I would start taking some profits here. When Consensio flips bearish, usually that's the time to be taking a little bit of profit off of the table. And I'm not going to lie, don't tell Carl, but I did sell some of my long-term Bitcoin. I did do that, but I am now putting that back in as price drops. I'll probably put some back in if Bitcoin reaches 59K, right? That's what I'm looking at. But now that Consensio is bearish, I think it's a time to be cautious, like I mentioned yesterday. And in terms of a potential price dip, I think the 30 period SMA would be beautiful at 56. And if my range is between 56 to 57 is a final buy the dip opportunity. But if Bitcoin doesn't come down to those levels, I think 59 is also very important. And what we can see here is at 56, not only we have the 30 period SMA, but we also have pretty good previous support from Bitcoin in the 2021 halving, 2021 Bitcoin bull market. So that's kind of my macro analysis on Bitcoin. Don't be scared if we fall, right? I was pretty hopeful that Bitcoin would break above this moving average, but it looks like it doesn't want to do that. On the weekly time frame, we have a couple of reversal candles back to back, a couple of indecision candles back to back. And when I go back in the prior all-time high for Bitcoin, usually that's what we see. I mean, we see a lot of indecision candles back, going back and forth, and eventually the volume isn't there enough to continue breaking towards the upside. I think this time there's a chance of it being different. Definitely, I think there's definitely a chance of being different. It's going to be dependent on this week's and next week's candle. Are we going to continue breaking down from here, or are we going to try and form a double top, or is Bitcoin going to continue going into a new bull market? Look, the safest thing, of course, nothing in this video is financial advice, but what we know is from the parabola theory, Bitcoin is in a parabola. Bitcoin is trading within a parabola. And within a parabola, you tend to have base 1, base 2, base 3, and base 4. And after base 4, you have one more leg towards the upside. So I'm a strong believer that this bull market is not yet finished, that at least we'll have one more leg towards the upside. But will that be after Bitcoin crashes down to 56K? Will then Bitcoin continue going up? It's possible. You can see that in base number 3, Bitcoin retested the 30 period moving average and then continued going higher. So is it possible that Bitcoin does the same thing and then continues higher? Hell yeah. Doesn't mean it's going to do that? No. So I think the safest way, if you are an accumulator of Bitcoin, if you're just a Bitcoin investor, that's to just dollar cost average into Bitcoin. I think you kind of missed the train into longing Bitcoin. The time to have long Bitcoin, which I also missed, was that when Bitcoin broke $31,000. That was the time to long. Let's be honest. That was the time to get into a long position. And the second time, if you were lucky, was over here. I think that was it. We had the kind of rumor by the rumor sell the news event with the ETFs. Bitcoin corrected to 38K. And once we were breaking 43K, that's when we could have identified a parabola forming. And that was the time to enter into a long position. So I think you're late for a long position, but for buying and holding Bitcoin, I do not think you're late whatsoever, because Bitcoin will eventually be the money, and our exit strategy is buying more Bitcoin and having less fiat. So I think if you want a dollar cost average, then you should feel free to do so at your own risk tolerance. I'm still doing it. And that's why I think Bitcoin will continue to be successful, even though if we have a short-term drop, which would be normal for Bitcoin because it has done 30%, 40% corrections within a parabola, but it still continued going towards the upside. But that's kind of my 2 Satoshis on what I think will happen on the macro term. I wish I could have seen this. Like, I'm just so tired these past few days. Sometimes I can't see things. But yeah, I guess that's a life lesson for me. I mean, sleep is super important. Speaking of life lessons, I've started a second channel, which I haven't posted my first video yet, but it's prepared. And that's kind of documenting my journey as a 16-year-old entrepreneur. I've started crypto when I was 12. And it's going to be super interesting. It's about learning more about myself, and for you guys, it's something for you. I know about myself, but it's also for me to look back in the next 10 years, 20 years and see, okay, this is how I thought. This is what I was planning to do. Was I able to achieve it? Did I end up doing something different? So it's going to be pretty cool. I'll leave a link to it in the next video, so stay tuned. But yeah, in the short term, can Bitcoin correct more? I think we will probably find support at 61.7. But Bitcoin will try its best to come back and punish this prior resistance and try flip it at best possible. On the macro, we could also be looking at a potential cup and handle pattern, but for that to be validated, we need Bitcoin to kind of find support. Otherwise, it won't look nice. But I think the most important part of this video was the macro analysis. I'm not going to flip entirely full bear mode and say, okay, 90K is canceled, all the bullish outcomes are canceled, unless Bitcoin breaks below 59K. If Bitcoin doesn't break below this line of support, we're technically still in this bull flag, and I'm still looking out for that $90,000 target. But remember, Bitcoin needs to keep it here. If we come back down and retest this support, just like how I said, if Bitcoin tested the upper bound, the resistance would become weaker and would have a likelier probability of breaking upwards. The same thing would happen with support. So if the price comes down and retests it once again, it would be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th time that Bitcoin would be retesting it. So it would be super, super weak, and Bitcoin would have a higher chance of breaking downwards. And then we can be even more bearish, expecting a 50K Bitcoin. But remember, that's all going to be dependent if Bitcoin breaks below 60K with a confirmation or not. So my mom is spamming me. She is rightfully doing so. It is 1 a.m. After all. So I kind of need to end the video off here. But thank you so much for watching. S&P is rebounding. So Bitcoin, I honestly thought that because the S&P would rebound, Bitcoin would follow the same sort of structure. But it looks like Bitcoin is acting a little bit differently here. The issue is Bitcoin ran out of narratives. There is no more narratives to keep Bitcoin pushing upwards. In the past bull market, it was all about adoption. It was all about, okay, Elon Musk is buying Bitcoin, Tesla is buying Bitcoin, Walmart is going to accept it, etc., etc. That's how Bitcoin reached 64, 59K. And then in the second phase of the bull market, again, it was a lot of Elon Musk manipulation. Retail kind of saw the news and they got back into it. And then funnily enough, Bitcoin tops at 69K, which I think is completely Elon. That was the kind of cycle. Now it was the Bitcoin spot ETFs, and we rode the Bitcoin spot ETFs from 27K all the way to arguably 73.7K. And we had the halving event. So what is next? What is next for Bitcoin? We've run out of narratives. I hope something comes out. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any. I think the Ethereum spot ETFs will be interesting, but at some point, Bitcoin will likely consolidate, and that's when we'll see altcoin season, and that's when we make life-changing capital. So I hope that was a good analysis overall. I've kind of shifted, like I really had to sit down today and like just clear everything on my chart and just look at price action. So if you ever feel lost with your price analysis, and as a trader, you will go through those times, just clear everything and just look at moving averages and just look at price. You don't need all these fancy oscillators and indicators. When I first started, I had like 40 different indicators, 40 different oscillators, but trust me, if you just look at price action, you can see all the psychology of the market. But guys and girls, have a great day. And that's it for me for this video, and I'll see you all very shortly. So take care, everyone, and bye-bye.